This is No One Left Behind by CosmicAce. Chapter 2, An Actual Friend. Summary. My boy, my son, the lavender boy is here. Kindergarten was all right. Not much different than preschool, if Izuku was being honest. More homework and no nap time, but that was about it. There were different kids, too. He started getting picked on again because they had to share their quirks. Not that every person in that class had a useful quirk, or had even gotten one yet, but they saw him as a target anyway. At least he never went home with burns or bruises at this school. But he wasn't the only one this time. There was another kid in the school, not in his class though, that got picked on too. Well, more ignored than bullied from what Izuku saw. He always sat beneath the same tree at recess, and ate lunch out of the same worn-out lunchbox. No one ever sat near him, sort of like they did with Izuku. Izuku overheard that his name was Shinso. He had lavender hair and eyes to match, just like Izuku did. Well, his were green, but they were still alike, which was why Izuku was determined to be his friend. Outcasts had to stick together. No one should be left by themselves. Besides, Shinso always looked sad sitting by himself. But Izuku couldn't work up the nerve to do it. What if he turned out like Kachan? What if he teased Izuku for not having a strong quirk, just like everyone else did? So he hesitated, and kept his distance. Izuku glanced at the tree at least once every recess, just to see if anything was different, but it never was. Shinso stayed at the same place, and stuck to the same silence every day. For the time being, Izuku was content to watch. He wasn't being pushed around like a punching bag, so why change what wasn't broken? Looking back, Izuku regretted waiting to meet his brother. Nothing changed until a recess in the third month of school. Izuku grabbed his lunch and went outside like any other school day. He glanced over to the tree and saw Shinso already there, just like he always was. The other kids avoided the two of them, but that hadn't changed since the first week. Nothing was out of the ordinary. Izuku ate his lunch his mom had lovingly made him. It had bunny rice balls. Everything his mom made was delicious, in his humble little opinion. Then he heard the yelling. Izuku immediately froze. It sounded like Kachan and his buddies. Their jeers and insults that they threw around nearly every day, almost always aimed at little, useless Deku that went home with hidden bruises those days. Izuku shook himself out of his daze. He wasn't at his old school. Kachan wasn't here. No more popping firecrackers or wings to hit him. There was still yelling, but not at him. It wasn't at him. The realization hit the 5-year-old in the form of him whipping around to face the tree he glanced at every day. There were now 4 people under the tree that hadn't had more than one for most of the year. 3 kids were surrounding Shinso, all of them obviously older than kindergarten. The one in the middle was doing the yelling. Shinso had his back pressed against the tree. He looked scared. Izuku's feet were moving before he could think. He raced up to the tree, catching himself when he stumbled. The bullies took no notice of him, but Shinso did, his wide eyes landing on the green-haired kid streaking towards the bully yelling at him. Izuku dove under the middle kid's arm, the other 2 letting out squawks of surprise at the sudden appearance of the tiny kid. Shinso didn't move, didn't say a word, but his expression was enough to cement Izuku's determination. He put himself between the bullies and Shinso, just like he had done with Kachan. But this time he wasn't going to lose. He wasn't going to go home with burns like last time. He couldn't lose any friends this time. After all, you can't lose what you don't have. Who are you, brat? The middle one bellowed. Izuku saw his fingernails shifting into something sharper. Metal, maybe. Izuku didn't say anything, only put his fists up in a guard his dad had taught him. The 3 in front of him tensed. Kugi, maybe we should leave, one of his lackeys urged, glancing around now. They didn't know Izuku, so they didn't know how dangerous he was. Yeah, the other one stuttered. We don't know his teacher. The middle bully, Kugi apparently, scoffed, not taking his eyes off Izuku. No way, these brats need to be taught a lesson. Izuku didn't move, even as memories rose. Memories of Kachan saying the same thing. He wasn't going to let someone get hurt like that again. Not like he had. Leave him alone, Izuku stuttered, but stayed put. Ha! It speaks. I'll give you one chance, kid. Move. The brainwasher deserves it. Izuku blinked, but didn't budge. Brainwasher? Was that Shinso's quirk? If it was, it sounded like a cool one. One of the other kids glanced back and turned to Kugi in a panic. A teacher's coming out? Ugh, they're not worth getting in trouble for, Kugi growled before turning and walking off, his lackeys at his heels. Izuku let out the breath he had been holding and put his fists down. No one had gotten hurt. Good. He turned towards Shinso, seeing the boy on the ground with his back to the tree. Are you okay? Izuku asked quietly, sitting on the ground near Shinso. He got a nod in response. Izuku grinned at Shinso, hoping it would help him feel better. Why did... Shinso's voice cracked. It was hoarse and croaky, especially for a 5-year-old. Why did you do that? Because it's what a hero would do, Izuku said confidently, and I want to be a hero, so I have to act like one. Heard things. You're picked on too. Well, yeah. Izuku pulled a piece of grass to distract himself, but kept talking. But I still want to be a hero. Bullies can't tell me what to do, that's what Mama says. But they hurt. I know. Why were they picking on you? It's okay if you don't want to tell me, though. Shinso stared at the ground for a minute, thinking about whether to share or not. Quirk. Brainwashing. Izuku perked up a bit. So his quirk really was brainwashing? That was so cool. And interesting. It would be good for hero work. Bad guys would just turn themselves in, not to mention hostage situations and held-up robberies. His quirk could make it so the villains get taken in and no civilians get hurt. Then there's the fact that it would be really useful for underground work, especially if he had a capture weapon like Eraserhead, or a voice changer, if his quirk even worked through a speaker. If it did that mean he could brainwash people from outside a room? Did he have to see the person? Did it have a range? Could he... You have analysis quirk? Shinso asked. I said that out loud, didn't I? Shinso nodded, but looked amused. Definitely better than him being creeped out, like some of the other kids were at Izuku's muttering. He couldn't help it. There were just so many thoughts that they didn't all want to stay inside his head. You don't think my quirk is bad? No! Izuku shook his head violently. Shinso seemed a bit worried, but he stopped after a second. Your quirk could be really useful. You could... Wait, you already heard me muttering. Everything I said during that, then. No lie? Nope. Do you want to be a hero, Shinso? Yes, he whispered, like Eraserhead. I love Eraserhead. Even though he's a new hero, he's still a really good one. Underground heroes are hard to track since they don't like media, but my mama found the video of his third-year sports festival. He's really cool and even fought against Present Mike and won. She told me he did that his second year too, but couldn't find a tape of it. All Might's my favorite, but Eraserhead's is my second favorite, and then is Present Mike. Izuku babbled on for a while. Shinso listened the whole time, slowly uncurling from his shell. He didn't speak much, but that was okay. Izuku could talk enough for the both of them. The topic of heroes turned to questions about favorite activities, and then what subject was their favorite. Most of it was just Izuku asking yes or no questions, but Shinso slowly started to talk more. Recess had to come to an end, though. Izuku was happy that he had gotten to talk to someone during it, and that his fears were proven wrong. Shinso was the furthest from Kacchan as anyone could be. He was quiet and reminded Izuku of dark colors, while Kacchan was loud and bright in everything he did. The two boys parted with a wave and promised to see each other tomorrow. Hitoshi really didn't want to go home today, if he could even call it that. Foster homes never kept him for long, not after learning his quirk. One way or another, he was always forced to leave. Most of the time it was when kids blamed him for things they did, or adults kicking him out when he asked a question. He wasn't allowed to talk in his foster homes, and never, ever ask any questions. It was similar at school, but at least there no one asked him anything in the first place. He still had to change schools because he said a kid controlled him at his last one. It had been going great so far. No one talked to him, so they couldn't blame him for anything. The teachers didn't call on him, but that was okay. He didn't really like answering what 2 + 2 was anyway. Then some of the older kids decided to pick on him. He couldn't do anything. Fighting back meant he was kicked out. The teachers would never believe a kindergartner over a 3rd grader. Telling them to stop or outright controlling them had the same result. So he stayed near his tree and prepared to go home with bruises. Not like anyone would care anyway. But then someone appeared. He knew the kid's name was Midoriya, and that he got picked on too, all for having a weak quirk. The opposite problem is Hitoshi's. Yet he still appeared, ducking under the bully's arm and putting himself between them and Hitoshi. They had never met, being in different classrooms, only knowing the other's name from whispers in the hallways, but he was still here, looking like some sort of small guardian angel. His green hair looked enough like a halo to be one. The bullies left, and Midoriya stayed. They talked for a while after that. Well, Midoriya talked, and Shinso nodded or shook his head. It was honestly the best thing that had happened to him in a while. Someone was actually talking to him, and they knew his quirk. He was mildly confused, but happy. It's also why he didn't want to go home. There was no Midoriya to defend him from the bullies there. He trudged back all the same. The house wasn't expensive or well kept. He's never seen a live plant in the yard, which is almost always littered with some sort of toys. Inside isn't much better. The walls are faded and stained in some places. The floor is dented and scratched beyond repair. Every piece of furniture doesn't match the other. Hitoshi thought it fit well with the people who lived in it. His foster parents weren't the worst ones he's had, though. They make him do chores and stay quiet, but that was it for once. It's the other foster kids that are the problem. 3 of them, 2 which seem to exist only to make his life worse. The 3rd is younger than him and can't cause much trouble other than running around and making a mess, like toddlers usually do. He managed to sneak in unnoticed. Maybe he got back before the other 2 this time? Either way, he retreated to his room as fast as his little legs can go without making a sound. He shared the room with the youngest, who plays downstairs most of the time. With the door shut, he let himself relax. One less bad thing for today. He put his bag down and flopped onto his bed, his hands brushing the photos inside his pillowcase. There were only 2, but they were important to him. One of his favorite hero, Eraserhead, and the other of his mom and dad. He doesn't remember them much, since they died when he was 3. "Someone helped me today, Mama," he whispered into his pillow. It was the only time he could talk without repercussions. Photos can't tell on you, after all. "His name's Midoriya. He stood up to bad people for me. You and Papa would like him. He's nice. Miss Toko no talk to me today, but it's okay. Midoriya talks to me. He has brain quirk, like me, but it makes him smart instead." Hitoshi smiled at no one, something he hadn't done for a long while. "He thinks I can be a hero, like Eraserhead. I think I want to save people so they don't lose their mommies and daddies like me. Can I, Mama, Papa?" Hitoshi heard the front door open. He would be called down to do chores soon. The picture stayed safely hidden in his pillowcase. For just a moment, he stayed where he was, thinking back on the day. "I think I have a new favorite hero, Mama. He's even cooler than Eraserhead. Maybe he'll be the one that saves me." This was Chapter 2 of No One Left Behind by CosmicAce. If you liked it, let me know in the comments and let CosmicAce know on their original story. And if you have any other suggestions for podfics I could record, let me know in the comments and I'll see what I can do. Thanks for listening.